Welcome to Nashville Realtors podcast with Brandon Hanna Properties, discussing everything you need to know for Nashville real estate. And here are your hosts for Nashville's Realtor, Brandon Hanna and Alec Lehman, your experts in everything Nashville real estate.
Hey guys, Brandon Hanna, Alec Lehman, Brandon Hanna Properties, your Nashville Realtor, here to answer a few of our questions that we get all the time from clients, customers. We thought this would be a really cool way to do it.
Exactly. We've had so many people coming in and asking us these questions. And so this is the first time that we're going to do kind of this podcast style. But I think if it goes well, if you guys love what you see, like the content, find that it is of value, we'd love to have more questions come in, and we'll keep running this thing on and kind of see how it goes.
That's right. So if you're listening to this or you're watching it, please post our emails, Brandon@BrandonHanna.com, Alec@BrandonHanna.com. Hit us up. We'd love to answer your questions because we're going to hit some high-level things. Today's topic is real estate investing. The economy in Middle Tennessee and the real estate market specifically has never been stronger. It's definitely a seller's market, meaning that it's much easier to sell than it is to buy. So when that happens, prices go up and people want to get into the game. They want to buy a primary house is usually the first step. And then from there, they like to invest into real property. So what does that mean, investing in real property?
Yeah, totally. And, people, you can either start young, you can start when you're older, but we have it all the time where somebody gets into their first home and after they've been there for a couple of years, they're like, you know what, I would really like to sell, but I want to keep this property and I want to rent it out. Or, we've got first-time home buyers that they already have that instilled in their mind, like, hey, this is a stepping stone property for me and I want to rent it out at some point. Where do I need to go? What are the steps that I need to take in order for that to be come to fruition?
Okay, so then
what are the first steps?
That's great. It hits on people in every walk of life. Mm-hmm. If you're renting in an apartment right now, but at some point in your lifetime you would like to be a landlord or invest in real estate. Okay, where do I start? Maybe you just retired last year and you want to invest in real estate, and maybe you have something in your retirement account that you want to diversify. There's some really great vehicles where you can self-direct your retirement accounts into investment properties. So we've got a lot of details to go over, and there are a lot of options, but I want you to tune in regardless of where you are in your walk of life, career status, family status, any of it. This applies to you. And one of the things we get, one of the most common questions probably is, we didn't think we were qualified to invest in real estate. Okay, so what does that mean? We don't have enough money to do it. We think it's just for the wealthy. We're never going to be in a position to do that. So how do I start?
Exactly. And I think, it actually does not take as much as I think people think that it does. There are loan programs out there that, a lot of times the minimum, a lot of times people think is that 20% down is kind of what investment properties, typically is what you have to put down in order to purchase an investment property. But there are actually different types of loans that you can get, one being a second home. And a lot of people don't know exactly what are the qualifications, but that's 10% down. So you're saving half of that down payment.
And a lot of this will be working with a good lender that will help step you through that process, because the difference in an investment property and a second home, there's some criteria, a lot of which is determined by the lender in that scenario. So again, those are things that when we sit down and talk with a potential client, that will help you vet out. Okay, how much do you have? What's your goal? Where would you like to be in a few years? Do you have an appetite to be a landlord? They say the three T's of being a landlord: tenants, toilets, and trash. Do you want to deal with that?
Exactly.
Honestly, a lot of people think it's great and glamorous until they get into it, and then they realize they're the ones cleaning up the mess when the tenants leave. And there are, with any investment, there are pitfalls. With real estate, there are different types of pitfalls. So high level, can you invest in real estate at any stage in life? The answer is yes. And we'll show you some examples. You and I talked about some really cool examples of people that were able to get into the game with very little down payment. Then the second thing is it a good time to invest?
Yeah.
I think that's a big question we get a lot. And right now our market is a seller's market. It's booming. The entire country's economy is great. But let's say you're listening to this in 2009, the recession just happened. Values are down. Lending's difficult to secure. Is it a good time to invest? Well, yes, in the right vehicle, in the right time, at the right price. And those are all the things that we have experienced. Gosh, this is our 17th year doing this.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of experience, primary homes, secondary homes, investment properties, in all of the markets. We went through the recession in 2008.
Exactly. I was going to say a lot of real estate agents, they didn't even make it through that time, because nobody was buying. Everybody was trying to sell, and so nobody was actually buying homes in there. And so, it takes a special agent. It takes somebody that really knows the market and really knows what they're doing to still help people find their homes.
Yeah, it's easy to sell them what they think they want, but to be able to talk somebody out of an idea that wouldn't be beneficial in the future or is too risky. There's some high risk investments in real estate. You think about it like stock market's very risky. But there's some high risk things in real estate too, and you can get yourself into trouble really quickly. So those are the things we want clients, not for tomorrow, but for life. Like we want them coming back to us because we've killed ourselves to make sure it's the best thing for them. So talking a client out of a property, I've heard you do it 100 times. I've done it 100 times. In fact, I'd like that to be our trademark, right? Like
exactly.
if we can't talk them out of something that's not a great deal, then I feel like we're not doing our job. And that makes this really rewarding because, in fact, we've had some third and fourth generational clients at this point. They bought a house with us. It went so great that their kids did, and now their children are buying properties, are investing with us, and so that referral system is really important. But having the client's best interest, easy to say. It unfortunately in this industry, it doesn't always. It's not always out there.
And resale value is one of the biggest things that you've always harped on. And when I first started working here, 4 or 5 years ago, that was the one thing you said. Resale value is the number one thing that we're going to look at. When a client falls in love with a home, we then step back as an independent, unbiased opinion and just say, okay, what would this house say? Because the average person, they stay in their home
7.5 years.
Average of 7.5 years. So you're going to walk into a home and you say, I love this home. I'm going to be here forever. Odds are you probably won't be there forever. And so we look at it and say, okay, will in 7.5 years, 4 years, 10 years, 15 years, is this home going to be a marketable home that you are going to get out what you put in plus, obviously we want as big as of a, resale value as possible.
It is.
And so that's why you say we talk people out of a home because there may be a couple things about the home that you can't change. The location, the school district, things like that. And so
that's right. When you get most people get so emotionally invested into the house that they're going to live in or even invest in. So to be that third party that helps them look at it from an analytical point of view, here are the numbers, especially with investment property. The numbers are really important because you kind of get one shot at it. You can buy and sell, but if you're buying and selling short of 3 years, a lot of times it's hard to recoup your money. So you want to do it right the first time. And specific to first-time home buyers, buying your first home, I always say is the most difficult and the most important to wait and get the best deal because then that equity snowballs into your next place and so on and so forth. Totally. You were a great example of this.
Yeah. Brief testimonial about that. I mean, my wife and I got married right at 20 and years old, and I worked at a restaurant. She was in school, working part-time in a restaurant, and we had a little bit of savings. We found this condo in a great spot in Franklin, Tennessee, here where we are, and my father-in-law and my mother both came to us and they were like, you need to buy that. We were familiar with the subdivision. My in-laws have actually, my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law, they had both lived in that same subdivision, and so they had known. And so we were like, we are not in a spot to buy. We've got the money, but that's like all of our money. And they're like, hey, listen, this is something that you need to do. You need to pull the trigger on that. And so they were very helpful in that whole process and getting that all set up. And so we ended up putting almost every dime that we had into this condo. And it was funny. It was so funny. A 30-year fixed mortgage is a normal thing, especially for a first-time home buyer, because obviously the payment is a lot less. You stretch out your mortgage over 30 years. My father-in-law came to me and he goes, I think you should consider doing a 15-year mortgage. I was like, what does that mean? I didn't even know that was a thing. I had no idea. And so I called my lender and I said, hey, I think we want to do a 15-year fixed mortgage. And he goes, I didn't even run numbers for that. He goes, could you afford that? And I was like, I don't know. And so at the time, my mother, was a real estate agent. So I went to her. We had come to you actually with advice as well. But we ended up pulling the trigger. We did a 15-year mortgage. Therefore, we were there for 3 years. That principal balance went further down. Obviously you're putting more towards your principal payment. You're paying less towards interest with a 15-year mortgage. And so
I want to jump in on that because I'll kind of skip to the end of the story. Yeah. That became your first investment property.
Oh yeah.
But
because we knew that's what we wanted to do.
That was your goal, and you bought it though as your primary residence, which meant you could put down as little as 3%. Nowadays, lending kind of starts at 3%. In fact, there are some loans, depending on the area and the borrower, that don't require any down payment. But to get an investment property, you're looking at 20% down.
Exactly.
Okay, so for those of you that are new to investing, when we say 20% down, 10% down, 3% down, those numbers are calculated off of the purchase price of the home. So let's say you bought a $100,000 condo and you needed 20% down. That would be $20,000 down payment plus closing costs. A lot of times we can negotiate the seller to pay closing costs and help with your cash out of pocket. But so Alec bought his first place. I don't know what your down payment was, but you could have bought it with just 3% down.
Yep.
And had your monthly payment would have been a little higher. Yep. But then he stays there for however long you want to stay there.
You stay there for 3 years.
2 years.
Live there 2 years.
And you can keep it, turn it into an investment property, rent it out, and go on and buy your next place. Now, that's not for everybody, because Alec and Mariah had to be very diligent about saving up a down payment for their next house.
Yeah. Because a lot of people, right, when they buy their first home, they have to sell, get their equity back out, and take that equity to buy their next house.
That's right.
My wife is very good at that. I struggle, but she helps me, save, and she's very, very good, very diligent.
So the benefits of saving up are huge. So, but what you're able to do is to have, in essence, bought an investment property with only 3.5% down payment, and you can keep doing that if you don't mind moving. So that is one example of a strategy for a first-time home buyer, very little down payment to get into the real estate game, both personally and from an investment standpoint.